So for this past week in film class, we watched two TED videos, and the first one was by Ben and Brown, and it was titled The Power of Vulnerability, and the second one was by Helen Fisher, and that one was titled Why We Love and Cheat. And basically both of these videos were talking about connection. And in the first video, it was talking about, or by Ben and Brown, it was talking about expanding our perception and how connection gives meaning to our lives. And so this video is talking about how she um, went into research and was trying to figure out like what made people so like really connected to others. And so she determined that vulnerability was the key to connection. So it sounds like it doesn't make much sense, and that usually for me at least when I think of something is vulnerable or someone's vulnerable, it's like that they are more weak and they're not as confident in themselves. But in Brown's perspective, she says that the vulnerable people is what actually connects people or makes a more intimate relationship with someone else. And this is because she described that the people that were wholehearted people, the ones that said that they would die for someone they loved, like these people had the courage to be imperfect, the compassion have compassion for themselves and then for others, and then also they were able to embrace vulnerability. And by embracing this vulnerability, they believed that this was what made them beautiful, and like they were willing to make themselves vulnerable and open up to other people. And so they were willing to take risks. They were willing to say that I love you first, or they were willing to say something or take a risk for themselves. And by doing this, they had a connection that was a result of authenticity. So they were willing to be who they really were instead of what they should be. They're letting that should aspect go away. And so I found it interesting how the people that didn't feel connected to someone else was they didn't feel that they were worthy of connection, so they couldn't have a connection with someone else. And she ultimately boiled that concept down to the word of shame. So shame of saying like I'm not good enough, I'm not strong enough, I'm not whatever enough. This shame unravels connection, and that. But in contrast, if you have vulnerability, if you're willing yourself to have vulnerability, you can pin down that shame, and you can have a better connection with other people. And so we talked about in class how it's interesting how relationships do depend on vulnerability. And so and nowadays everyone likes to take control of things, and you don't like to live in uncertainty. So we're talking about how maybe this trying to control and to predict the future and to predict someone else or other relationships is why we have such a high divorce rate in the world today. And also on the concept of vulnerability is that people don't like to feel vulnerable. They don't like that aspect of feeling that way, so they try to numb their vulnerability by doing things such as like alcohol or other substances in order to numb that vulnerable emotions such as fear or stress. But in reality, you cannot pinpoint and numb just one specific emotion. But when you try to numb your vulnerability, you numb everything, even the positive aspects of vulnerability. So that was what I found really interesting talking in that video. And in the other video by Helen Fisher, we talked about the concept of romantic love. And this one was really interesting because it wasn't as much about the connection, like how to love someone and how to have romantic love. It was actually the like actual human aspect of it, I guess you would say, the scientific aspect of it. And that romantic love, she said, was actually not an emotion, but it is a drive that comes from the motor part of your brain. And so she divided romantic love into three parts, which was craving, motivation, and obsession. And so in the beginning of romantic love, if it's happening, the other person takes on a special meaning, and that person becomes the only focus. And you want to become like possessive of the person, so that would be like the craving. And then you have this intense craving where for the other person emotionally and sexually, and that would be your motivation and then the third one would be obsession. And so what I found interesting was that The area stimulated by this romantic love was also stimulated by the same areas of cocaine. And she described this love as like three brain systems. And the first one would be like the sex drive, which is just anyone, anytime, just woo. And then the second level of it is romantic love, which it becomes the sole focus on one person. And that would be the intense love. And then the third was attachment, which is where it's the deep-seated love. And she's described this type of love as actually kind of a survival of the fittest um, kind of thing in our anatomy or physiology, I guess, that us as humans want to survive and reproduce. So these three brain systems is what actually, that's the reason why we have love, is so when you get to the romantic love part, the intense love, it's actually you're focusing all of your energy on only one person, so you're conserving energy. And then when you get to the deep-seated love, the attachment, this attachment is for a period of time when you're allowing enough time to raise your child and make sure that she or he is strong enough and fit to reproduce the next generation. So she was describing that all of this aspect of love and romantic love was from the scientific point of view. It was just for being survival of the fittest. So basically that was the few things that we covered over the week and that I found some interest in and thought I would share with you. So thank you very much.